In a world that feels like it's changing faster every single day, where entire industries can be turned upside down overnight, there is one skill that really stands above all the others. It's the one thing that separates those who get left behind from those who lead the charge. And it's not about what you know, it's about how quickly you can adapt to what you don't know. And this brings us to a perfect example, a classic story, really. Cast your mind back to the year 2000. Blockbuster was the absolute king of home entertainment. I mean, they were everywhere. And they had a chance to buy a tiny little upstart for just $50 million. That company? It was Netflix. Blockbuster said no. They passed, calling the whole mail-order DVD thing a very small niche business. Why? Well, they were hooked on their super profitable late fee model, and they just couldn't see the massive shift that was happening right under their noses. And this wasn't just a one-off thing. I mean, think about Kodak. The irony here is just incredible. Kodak actually invented the very first digital camera way back in 1975. But their own management was so scared that this new technology would cannibalize their incredibly profitable film business that they essentially buried it. By the time they finally woke up and decided to pivot, it was way too late. Their competitors had already swooped in and captured the very market that Kodak could have owned. So these aren't just interesting business stories you tell at a party. They're really powerful cautionary tales. They're about what happens when you fail to adapt. And when you look closely, you start to see a very clear pattern. So what's the common thread here? What connects the downfall of giants like BlackBerry and Sears and Borders? It was a fundamental lack of adaptability, right? BlackBerry stubbornly clung to its physical keyboard, while the iPhone was completely changing the game. Sears and Borders, they just failed to build any kind of meaningful online presence to compete with Amazon. They all became victims of their own success, totally unable to pivot when the world changed all around them. But hey, this isn't about pointing fingers at companies that failed. It's about learning from them. It's about a quality that we can all measure, and even more importantly, that we can develop in ourselves. Which really brings us to the core question here. What is that essential skill? The one that allows some people and some organizations to actually thrive on change, while others just crumble under the pressure? Well, the answer is the Adaptability Quotient, or AQ. The easiest way to think about it is like IQ for intelligence, or EQ for emotion. AQ is basically a measure of your ability to pivot, to adjust, and to respond effectively when things don't go according to plan, which, let's be honest, is most of the time. And this is a really important distinction to make. Having a high AQ isn't just about putting up a defensive shield against chaos. It's an offensive weapon. It's about seeing all that uncertainty not as a threat, but as a genuine opportunity for growth, a chance to innovate, and a way to get way ahead of the curve. So how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, having a high AQ gives you the tools to navigate those common mental roadblocks that stop most people dead in their tracks. Roadblocks that sound a little something like this. Ah, yes, probably the 7 most expensive words in business. This right here is the sound of cognitive fixedness. It's that tendency we all have to just rely on the old methods even when they're clearly not working anymore. It's comfortable, it's familiar, and it is incredibly dangerous. So how do you break out of that trap? Well, someone with a high AQ actively challenges the status quo. They don't just ask, how can we do this a little bit better? They ask, what if we tried something completely different? They reframe the problem, they brainstorm totally unconventional ideas, and they question every single assumption. And here's the other big one, the other obstacle, the fear of failure. This fear can totally paralyze people and teams. It stops them from trying new, innovative ideas that could lead to massive breakthroughs. But here's how a high AQ mindset flips that on its head. See, failure isn't the opposite of success, it's a part of success. It's just data. It's a learning opportunity. This mindset encourages experimentation with the whole philosophy of fail fast, learn faster. It's about taking smart, calculated risks. Because you know what? The biggest risk of all is never taking one. Okay, so we've identified the problem and we've talked about the right mindset. Now for the most important part. How can you actively improve your own adaptability quotient? And the best news of all is that, unlike some other things, your AQ isn't some fixed trait you're born with. It's a skill. It's a muscle. And just like any muscle, you can strengthen it with intentional practice. We can actually break this down into a really simple 3-part plan. First, you've got to shift your mindset. Second, you develop key skills. And third, you take actionable behaviors. Let's dig into each one. Okay, first up, mindset shifts. This is your foundation. It all starts with a growth mindset, that core belief that your abilities can be developed. Then you have to cultivate curiosity. Become that person who's always asking why and what if. Keep a positive outlook by actively searching for the opportunity hidden inside every challenge. And finally, adopt what's called a beginner's mind. That just means approaching things you know well as if it's your very first time, which opens you up to unlearning old habits and finding way better ways to do things. Next, you build specific skills on top of that mindset. You've got to enhance your emotional intelligence, your EQ, so you can manage your own reactions when you're under pressure instead of letting stress run the show. Strengthen your creative problem solving. Here's a fun one. Try to come up with 10 totally different uses for a paperclip. It literally trains your brain to think more flexibly. Build your resilience, which is that crucial skill of bouncing back from setbacks, not avoiding them. And finally, take control of your own learning journey, so you're always staying ahead of the curve. And finally, we get to actionable behaviors. This is how you make adaptability a real habit. Step outside your comfort zone on a regular basis. It can be something small, like volunteer to lead that part of a meeting you normally shy away from. Actively seek out constructive feedback, because none of us can see our own blind spots. Diversify your network. Go have lunch with someone from a totally different department to get a fresh perspective. And practice scenario planning. Think through what-if situations before they happen. It builds that muscle memory for change. So, as we start to wrap things up here, I want to leave you with a direct, personal challenge that really ties everything we've talked about together. I want you to look at your own career, your own industry, your own life. Change is not a question of if, it's a question of when. The only real choice you have is how you're going to respond. So, will you be the one clinging to the way things have always been done, or will you be the one who sees the change coming and uses it as fuel to create the future? The choice is yours.